Hi.
Hello again, and welcome to our little weekly talk where we look at some of the posts from the week and try to talk in some detail about those from our perspective and share with you some of the views that we get from other people.
So we're going to start with this post. Excuse me. I'm going to read it. It's a long one. So sit back and be ready. This person posted, I'm in need of some inspiration, cheering on, and support. I had the one meal a day down pat and happy for about 18 months with no cravings, really good AC, and great weight loss. And then some big life things happened and poor food timing choices. I am finding it hard again. Specifically, I am starting back in stages and currently have a window of 12-5. This works 12 to 5, like noon to 5. This works really well for me, but I am overeating in that window and really hitting the carbs hard, which don't agree with me and make me crave. I want to move back to one meal a day and fewer/little carbs, but the big inspiration and motivation is elusive and lots of life stress is going on. What helps you get and keep going? I'd love to hear some inspiring thoughts. I love Fast 5 and I truly believe in it. I just need to jump back onto the wagon and stay there. Now, before we talk about our thoughts on what the person who posted this post commented upon, I'd like to say I'm incredibly impressed that the community rallied around and this person received an outpouring of ideas, encouragement, inspiration, and other. But when it comes to as some people call it, falling off the wagon, it's not really our favorite term, but to stepping away from this lifestyle for a period of time for whatever reasons, and then working to return back to this lifestyle, it reminded us of one of the analogies that Dr. Bert put into the Fast 5 book, and that's called the Sandy Hill. So I'm going to say, take it away and tell us about the Sandy Hill.
The Sandy Hill is just a reference to what it feels like when you're climbing up a sand dune. And in case you've never done it, when you climb up a sand dune, every step you take, you put your foot in and slide back a little bit. But it doesn't slide back the full step. So if you just keep going, your little steps, even if you're sliding back most of the way with each step, you still can get to the top of the dune and then you have reached your goal. And so what we encourage people to do is to remember that this process of adaptation is very typically a sandy hill. You push a little, you take a step, you might slide back a little bit, but as long as you keep going and don't let up, your body adapts and you get back into the adaptation where your fat cells are providing the fuel and you're ready for fasting.
And so when you have been even an 18-month or a 2-year or a 17-year Fast 5 or a person who lives an intermittent Fast 5 appetite correction lifestyle, when you step away for a while, then getting back to it means adapting. So even if you're a really long-term veteran of this lifestyle, the pause means there's a little bit of that Sandy Hill effect that can happen. One person used a word, what do they call it? Starting something. I don't remember, but I thought I'd written it down. I didn't. Sort of the starting turbulence or some such thing. And it takes a little pushing back again.
And we've also talked in other places about how important it is to manage stress. And stress is an unavoidable part of our lives, but it can sure have a big impact on appetite and make things very difficult. And so managing stress is a big part of freeing your body to be able to do what you want it to do. Because as long as the stress is putting its kind of torque on things, that your body's going to want to try to protect itself, which means eating more.
It is, yeah. Now, just because we're sitting in a different place than we usually do, and it would be fun to be sitting in a different place often, we're in the bedroom of one of our family members. We're having a holiday time here in Pennsylvania, actually York, Pennsylvania, and holidays have their intrinsic stress. This is, I think, a nice segue to mentioning that the New York Times had an article, I don't know, in the last couple of days, I happened upon it, called The Gift of Self-Care. And it was referenced the work of Haemin Sunim, and it's kind of fun, since Fast 5 is the particular variety of intermittent fasting that has been in our world, that this is a 5-step simple plan that this writer has recommended for the giving one the gift of self-care. And the writer is a Buddhist monk, and I think has published a number of works, but I thought it might be nice to take time to talk about those 5 steps that this particular author advocated for, and they make perfect sense. I mean, this isn't unique and distinctive, but it is certainly something that is worth revisiting, particularly as we're talking about managing stress and holidays and being with family and getting outside of one's routine.
Sounds good. So
Yeah.
let's have step 1.
Step 1 is breathe.
We can do that.
We can do that, yeah.
Breathe.
So breathe deeply and connect with the breath. And I think one of the things that breathing and being aware of one's breathing and really taking deep, intentional breaths can do is it can remind us of the internal workings of our body, and that it is our body, this beautiful machine, and it takes breath in, it puts breath out, and it has a rhythm that is like the rhythm of life. And when we're feeling very stressed, connecting with our own intrinsic rhythm of life, people call it centering. I mean, there are lots of words to describe that grounding, that connection with one's body. And so that's one of the simple 5-step plans that this author talks about. The second is accept. And that is to accept that turbulence is part of life. What Bert was saying, it's unavoidable. And in some ways, it's frankly essential to the variety and the challenge that we need. And you talked about challenge when you gave your TEDx talk back in 2012.
Right.
Yeah.
So an important part of life is to have that challenge, but we can see that too much of it can be toxic. It can be overwhelming, and it can be very troublesome to keep the stress sort of outside. It can get into our heads and really change our thoughts, our moods, our character. And so it's important to accept that it's out there so that it isn't trying to invade our life. And we want to deal with it as something outside of ourselves, not like a poison within our own minds.
Yeah. And the other part of this acceptance, I think, if one thinks about it, is that we are humans, and humans are imperfect creatures. And that imperfection is frankly a beautiful aspect of being human. I mean, it's really nice to know that we not only do we not have to be perfect, it is not possible. And I think when we recognize that perfection isn't, when we accept that we're imperfect creatures, we get to kind of go with the taking on new challenges and moving through challenges without indicting ourselves for being imperfect. Because yeah, go ahead.
And Gina has commented that we'd get bored if life was easy all the time, and I totally agree.
I do too.
We sometimes strive for that, but when we look at people who have life very easy with no challenges, it looks like it gets kind of stagnant, and people start turning to other things for some kind of excitement, some kind of challenge, and it can just lead to like a drug spiral, that kind of thing, when we don't have ordinary challenges to deal with.
Right. When the challenge becomes, basically creating challenges because life is just that smooth and that tended to by outside
can just get
correctors.
Boring,
yeah. The third step that this author talks about is write, the WRITE, not the right, like perfect, right. And writing has an interesting attribute to it that sometimes in writing, let's say you receive an email from somebody and it's toxic. I mean, it is something that really, really steps on your day. Sometimes writing out a response to that, never, ever, ever needing to share that with anybody, but really writing it out for yourself can be a great way to organize one's thoughts, to collect one's sense of the proportion of things, and to just think. I mean, it's a great way of thinking. And so writing, journaling, I know we have some folks in this group, a lot of people in this group journal, and I think journaling is a way to express oneself without the risk of having to share that.
And yeah, I think it's one of the things that helps keep things outside of us. When we express it, it goes, whatever's in our head that's a symptom of the stress, it puts it outside again and helps us get rid of it. And I've written quite a bit, obviously, and find that how we write really makes a difference. And if I'm typing something, I'm in a different mindset than if I'm writing with a pen. And when I want to get that full expression out, I find that writing with a pen is more fluent, it's more expressive, if you will, than using a keyboard. And why that is, I don't know. Maybe because that's the first way I learned to express myself was with a pen. It was a long time before keywords. So maybe that's part of it. But you can experiment and find which avenue gets that, it gets your inside conflicts or your stresses, gets them outside best for you.
And one of the fun things to do, I mean, some people write out holiday cards at this time, but one of the things that can be really fun is to resurrect or to recapture the tangible letter writing that we used to do in the past. Receiving a letter in the mail is such a unique experience for some people that it brings joy beyond imagination. And sending a letter, again, collecting those thoughts slowly, where you don't get to actually edit in the same way. I find it truly gratifying to write a letter and to slash through a word when it's the wrong word, because I'm kind of a quick writer. You know, it's the old doctor thing. Sometimes we just like scratch things out, right? And I look at it and I realize the person who's receiving this letter is not going to have a clue what that word is. And so I just scratch it out and say it again. And it feels, again, this whole imperfection concept, it feels wonderful to just be and to be allowed to just be. Yeah. So the fourth of these this 5-step plan that this author talked about, again, the author is Haemin Sunim. I'm not familiar with the author, frankly, except this particular reference, but I'm going to be checking that person out, is to talk. And one of the things that was mentioned was talking, and that talk, I think one could put a period after that word and have the whole concept out there. But particularly this author advocated for talking to a trusted friend, a non-judgmental friend. Now, when I was reading that, I thought to myself, that also requires negotiating space and negotiating the degree of burden that you will take from yourself and apply to someone else. So it's a balancing act in and of itself, a kind of
don't want to just unload on somebody,
right?
But if they know what's going on and you're talking this out, that's a different thing.
It is, and so it can be a very, very helpful thing to do. And then the final one was walk, and I have a take on this that was a little bit different than the author's, and that is we experience life through movement. It's one of the things that really differentiates us from the amoeba, which also experiences life, however that is. But when we move our bodies through space, we take in information differently, we process information differently. And so taking a walk, just moving from one space to another, can redirect the pathways through which one is thinking, and can take this stress and provide the gift of self-care in a way that probably little else can. Walking gently through a space, or briskly, or however one wants to walk. I mean, walk with someone, walk in solitude. Walking can refocus your attention away from what's been troubling you and give you more things to, we sometimes talk about the zoom lens. Sometimes life gets really tough because the thing that is bothering us is right here, right in front of our face. And if we can take it off of zoom and move it out a little ways, then we can see the things around it. And it lets us gain perspective. And so walking gives us a lot of prompts for gaining perspective about, in the grand scheme of things, what is this thing that's bothering us? Where does it really stack up?
I like that. And it reminds me of some of the things we talked about in terms of Fast 5, in that the walking sets a rhythm, it sets a pace,
Good,
and
Gina.
your body is
excuse me,
is naturally, reflexively maintaining this rhythm. We're not having to think 1 foot, left foot, right foot, left foot, right foot. The body has its own rhythm for walking. And it's even to the point that a person's gait is so distinctive it can be used to identify them. So
when you can't even see them.
Right.
Or when you see them, yeah.
Right. So we have this particular rhythm. But we've also seen that how much of an impact rhythm has in terms of eating, how often we eat. 30 years ago, nobody thought it was any big deal when we ate, or how that would affect our gut. But our guts have their own rhythm, and we've seen since then that the gut and the brain are tied together in circadian rhythms. And so adding this kind of metronome or beat of walking is just another way that our body flows into the rhythm and can have its kind of soothing, settling, evening things out effect.
Gina said, I find walking to be very meditative, and I can imagine that. It really is, when you talk about that rhythm, that beat as you're walking along, that 1 foot, I mean, frankly, you can't do it without putting 1 foot in front of the other. So there is a cadence that demands that, I mean, it embodies that phrase, 1 step at a time, literally. One walks 1 step at a time.
And Judy and I have had certain paths that we've taken walks on, and we have a long walk path and a short walk path, and sometimes we'll get frustrated with something and just say, how about a walk? And
we talk about walking meetings. We do walking meetings. So the
ideas keep coming. We keep talking about stuff, and so it's still productive from a work perspective, but we want to get that outside feel, that rhythm, and that change of pace, both mentally and physically,
right,
to stir things up a bit.
So anyway, we'll leave you with that. I mean, we don't need to be talking more about that, because obviously you can think about it and have your own thoughts and your own ideas about it. But we decided to, I mean, since we're kind of in this, we're out of our usual place and a little bit, things are harried and a little bit chaotic here, and that's kind of fun. We have this little grab bag of ideas that we had that we might also mention. And one of them is, somebody, this is just fun. Somebody mentioned that they were listening to the audiobook, a.k.a. The Power of Appetite Correction, while they were going to sleep. Now, we hope it didn't put them to sleep, but maybe it did, and that's okay. But it led to some wild dreams. And so I mean, Bert pointed it out. It made you laugh, so I just want you to make a mention of it.
I can just imagine I don't know if it was dreams about gremlins or...
carousel horses.
Yes, Mustangs, getting your Mustang or riding off a carousel on your Mustang or whatever it is. That was pretty fun to read.
Yeah, that was great. We like that. And so we appreciate whoever went to sleep listening to the audiobook, gave us a big old smile.
Yeah, sorry we can't scroll and find you by name right now, but
yeah. Well, it's also maybe not polite to say names. We don't know. Let us know if you ever don't want your name to be mentioned, let us know. Also, somebody was talking about a problem, and this is actually a very common problem. I mean, again, that's a funny word. A common experience that people who live an intermittent fasting lifestyle mention is that they get cold during the day when they're in their fasting period. And so we thought it would be kind of fun to talk about ways. I know we work in 2 different workspaces, and your space tends to be a little bit colder. And so we thought we'd talk about some hints for staying warm, because we know this problem well ourselves.
We do. And it can be one of the most annoying parts of maintaining a fasting schedule. And I have had my fingers get cold, so I know the feeling that people are talking about. And I layer up and do what I can. But there have been times when I've been in a workplace that I haven't been able to adjust the temperature in, or has a strong draft blowing through. And I've actually had a hand warmer. I wear a hoodie and put the hand warmer in my pocket.
I put the hood up sometimes.
And so when I'm not typing, I put my hands in my hoodie pocket with the hand warmer and warm it there. It's a battery powered hand warmer. It's good for a couple of hours, then recharge and go again. And so it is a real nuisance, and I can appreciate it. It is one worth tolerating, in my opinion, of course, but I wish there were some just switch we could flip and tell our bodies to dump out a little bit more heat, but I haven't found it yet.
Well, I've imagined some inventions that could really work with that. So if anybody has great inventions, like literally a body heater that is like a bodysuit, that would be kind of fun.
Well, I was in a store this morning, and the fellow at the register was wearing gloves that he'd cut the fingertips off of.
Right.
And so it wasn't just fingerless glove; it was fingertipless gloves. And it I didn't ask, maybe I should have. I was wondering, hey, are you an intermittent faster? Because he's got these prevention for cold hands.
Right. Taking a walk is another thing. I know that you plan your breaks. I plan my breaks sometimes for when I get cold. If I get cold, yeah, go ahead.
And stairs, if you walk stairs, that puts out a lot more heat than just level walking.
Right. So right. Taking the stairs a couple times really warms me up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That works for me.
Hot tea or hot beverage. The downside of that is then you have to go to the restroom, or at least I'll speak for myself. Then I have to run to the toilet. So
both cupping the that warms your hands, and then the warm water or liquid in your body.
And then the old standby, a lap blanket, just a little bit of a blanket on my lap sometimes is just enough to change the thing, or a neck scarf, because again, if I can warm up one part, sometimes the rest of it all warms up.
Right. And we do lose a lot of heat through the skin of our head, particularly those of us who don't have much hair. And so if you can wear a hat, if you're in a place where that's comfortable, that can really decrease the amount of body heat you lose.
So then there was a question in the group in the last week, and that was, does tasting food while I cook break my fast? This is the downside of this one. Yeah, it does. Unless it's 0-calorie food. I guess if one ate Jell-O, 0 calorie. I mean, I suppose, but if we're talking sauces and this and that, as soon as you put a calorie in your mouth, it breaks your fast. Now, that goes back to that old study of one. If it doesn't change your outcomes, if you still are reaching your goal, then have at it,
Yeah, that's the bottom line. Does it change whether you start feeling hungry or not? If it doesn't, you can get away with it, and a couple of calories here and there isn't going to stand in your way of progress. But the key is, does your brain think of it as eating? Does your body think of it as eating? And does it get you into the eating mode? For some people it will, and some people it won't. And the other thing to look at, I used to do a lot more cooking than I do right now, but I would also just take a taste and spit it out. And,
yeah, that's right. It sounds disgusting, but you know what? It really does work.
But it's functional, and so the calories don't go inside. And I know for sure that I'm not eating, and so I didn't have to worry about what its effects would be.
And you rinse it, and you're polite about it. You don't spit when someone's like standing around. Discreet spitting. So Carolyn says that she wears fingerless gloves, and that Raynaud's is a problem, and that amplifies it. I can see that. I wonder, and we'd be interested in you sharing, if you're interested, is has your Raynaud's changed in any way before or after you began your intermittent fasting lifestyle? Just curious. You don't feel obligated to share, but that is the thought that came to me. And then finally, we wanted to make sure we mentioned the podcast, because we're working on this really fun thing. And in fact, we're going to be recording an episode after we finish this, because we get to look not polished again.
Yeah, so we have one podcast up on the website, and we'll soon be getting that into a subscribable mode. But yeah, we'll be working on that as a way to talk through some things and try to offer a very current look at what we're thinking. And like you, we are still looking for things that can improve our health. And
always, yeah.
There are some things that are, things pop up like, say, antioxidants. So far, there's been no evidence that antioxidants help humans at all. People have tried lots and lots of stuff, and stores have sold lots and lots of antioxidants, but the researchers have not been able to find any evidence that it actually does any good for humans. And so we're still watching that kind of thing, saying, well, is it worthwhile? Is there one that really does work? so far, no. But if we see something like that,
we'll share.
We'll share it as soon as we feel like it's something worth your time and money and putting your body into it.
Right. Because there's nothing that you do that's not a risk. I mean, everything has a benefit and a risk. The other thing about this podcast that's really cool is it is our opportunity to certainly explore and talk about intermittent fasting lifestyles, appetite correction, but also to explore the bigger topic, which is DIET. The name of the podcast is the DIET podcast, which is, to just offer the reminder, is Did I Enrich Today? And it really provides the platform for us and our partner, Allison, to explore the enriching things that life offers and that we can give to and get from the lives that we live.
Right. And to maintain the big view of a diet as being all the things that we take in, not just food and not just the timing of our food.
Like family.
But the relationships, the challenges, like we mentioned before, the challenges that we take on that help keep us alive, and the connections we make, all that is what we have seen as a healthy diet for years. And so the intermittent fasting is just a tiny part of that.
Right.
And we'll put all of that into it that we can.
Yeah. So thanks again for listening. We're always happy to connect. It's really, truly our pleasure and our privilege. And so for those of you who are celebrating any holidays in the next, in the next lifetime, happy holiday.
In the next year.
Yeah. So bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Thanks for listening and watching.